Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, your content capsule. It's a brand new week here in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm actually enjoying the final 2 weeks of the ease in traffic congestion before school restarts. It's going to be challenging having to wake up an hour early, time to get back into routine, but nevertheless we all do it because, well, we don't have to, but at the same time we always want Talking Point to continue. Alongside me this morning is my co-host, my colleague, my good friend. He's the former youth parliamentarian and the host of WSN's 1 and 1. That is Mr. Camille Pascal. Good morning, Camille. How are you and how was your weekend?
Good morning, Keaton, and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. My weekend was quiet, it passed pretty quickly, but we're here and it's Talking Point on
Pretty
Monday morning.
quickly is an understatement, my friend. It passed very, very quickly. In fact, yesterday, I messaged my friends. I was like, when is the next long weekend? But because Republic Day falls on a Saturday.
Exactly, and Independence falls on a Wednesday. So essentially, we do have anything. I think in Diwali, that's in October.
Probably, I think it's a Monday, if I'm not
it
mistaken.
Yes.
So, well, I suppose you get it nice there because you've got a long weekend, and I look forward definitely to the delicacies and the festivities. But Camille, as you said, the weekend was rather short, as is with most weekends, but not entirely quiet across Trinidad and Tobago. I think that there's so many stories, usually on a Monday morning here in Talking Point, with the time that we have. To get into everything is always difficult. In a bit, we will be joined by our guest this morning to continue the conversation associated with the cost of going back to school. And adding to that, there's also a mental aspect of that we also need to analyze and we cannot forget at all. And speaking about mental illness, and very unfortunate me that I have used to segue into this particular conversation, but another child has died at the hands of a relative. In this instance, 7-year-old Mackenzie Hope Rishi of Palo Seco was strangled, or allegedly strangled, because police have to conduct their investigations, by a 25-year-old relative who at this point has remained anonymous for the most. So I was having to get into these stories, but I know that you were following it up, I was following it up, and the first thing is the house in which the individual was living in and which the relative was staying at, Hope was staying at.
Yes, it's certainly a tragedy, and I think most people would have been gripped by this tragedy early on Saturday morning when we heard of when the story was initially published. And so at this particular point, examining all the factors that are associated with it, it's a clear case of a mental situation, even based on what the neighbors have stated. It's certainly a sad situation, especially for that particular community.
Very much so, and well, to analyze the story, a neighbor indicated that Michelle Alexander stated that Mackenzie would often come in her yard to play, but she noticed the behavior of the suspect, who Mackenzie was staying with for quite some time, actually, on and off, was rather strange. Questioned her about it, questioned her about her behavior and why she was not seeing Mackenzie as often. And according to Miss Michelle Alexander, the suspect responded with, and I quote, "Olia would not see us just now. We would not be here soon." End quote. That's what Michelle Alexander was stating. Reports indicate that on Friday at around 4 p.m., the suspect called a friend to take her to the grocery, after which she also purchased a meal from a local fast food restaurant. Following this, she went to an imam at around 10:30 in the night, and she had her meal there, and she then confessed to the killing. The imam went to the house where he observed Mackenzie's body lying wrapped in a curtain on a soiled mattress. It's a 10 by 10 shack. And the imam then called the police. Of course, the conversation surrounding who is to blame, why wasn't anybody arrested, this person should be charged. Trinidadians obviously have an opinion.
Certainly. And that's always the conversation when you look at issues like this. I mean, this is not the first time we're hearing of tragedies or similar tragedies, rather. And we always there, and we always cast aspersions and cast blames and speculate on what actually happened without actually knowing the facts or the intimate details of the case. And it's certainly one of those cases that you kind of wonder after the fact, and you think about all the different possibilities that could have happened before it reached to this particular point. But certainly a sad situation indeed.
So, Kemiel, let's now analyze this. Let's take a look at it from the first point where Michelle Alexander indicated, this is the neighbor, she indicated that after hearing this from the suspect, she went to the police and she made a report. The police never showed up. Now, we have been very fortunate to have a media ambassador on this program. Unfortunately, he's not with us today. He will be joining us on Friday. But it's often stated, every time you ask the TTPS, indications or people in the area have stated that they made a report to the police and the police never showed up. And that is often disputed by the police, who are actually yet to respond in this particular instance. But it's something that I'm constantly hearing. And by all means, mind you, in my personal experience, to get in contact with a police station in your area is extremely difficult. If you call the police hotline, you get through quicker. To get through to your actual police station is extremely difficult.
Yeah, and that's most often the case that we see, where we hear of relatives and even neighbors and close family members making reports or at least reaching out to the authorities to say, this is what's happening in this particular home. I think you all should have some sort of intervention. And then after the fact, when the situation actually explodes, then we actually hear, well, reports were made, but no one came. None of the authorities actually showed up. No one investigated. No one attempted to see how best they could have a solution for the problem. And that's what we always see. And as I said, everything is always an afterthought for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's sad that it always reaches to this point. Everything always comes out to be an afterthought.
Folks, let me just remind you that when you go to a police station to make a report, once the official report has been completed and signed off, not only at the police officer who took the report, but the police officer who is actually managing the station at that point in time also has to sign off on it. It has to be stamped. You receive a receipt that you made the report. That piece of paper is not for you to throw away. That is extremely important, especially, unfortunately, but especially in instances such as this. Because now the police can actually dispute, well, no report was ever made. The one piece of evidence, because it's your word versus the police word, the one piece of evidence is that receipt. And this is education that people in Trinidad and Tobago need to understand and need to know better. And I think the TTPS has a long way to go in educating the public over that. But again, it's too late in this instance. Hope has passed on.
Certainly.
So what is it that we do now? Who is responsible? If a police report was made, the officer who took that report and the station manager at the time, they're not often held accountable. Nothing is ever really done about it.
That's what we see often, because things are not followed up on. There's no sort of accountability, no transparency. People go there and they make reports, and as you mentioned, some people don't know how important that citizens' report receipt is to the eventual case and how it actually pans out. So it's certainly something that citizens should take note of, and we should acknowledge the fact that now the child has now died. What can we do to prevent a situation like this from happening to another child? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're in at this point, because the child has already passed on.
And oftentimes, let's look at the other aspect in relation to what the neighbor reported to the police. And I quote, "All you would not see us just now, we would not be here soon," end quote. The family of the individual who has passed away, Mackenzie, 7-year-old Mackenzie, was stating that for a while they knew that this relative suffered with depression, suffered with some form of mental illness. Now, at this point in time, we respect the privacy of the family. It has become public here in TNT, so to say that there is some level of privacy, whatever there is, we respect it. Let the police carry out their investigations. But the other side of this, which is not new, and this is what is frustrating, Kemiel, is that you are aware that this individual suffered from depression. As all reports indicate, you are aware that this individual suffered with some form of mental illness. And whilst I'm in no position to lay judgment on anybody, and I cannot be the jury in this instance, why is it that you would allow the child to stay with this relative?
Well, based on what was stated, it said that this particular relative would have had a child before whom she lost, and then she had another child, and that being 7-year-old Mackenzie. And just based on probably living conditions, and they would have also stated in the article that based on the pandemic, I think she would have probably lost her job along the way, and a lot of stress associated with just living day to day would have brought her to this point. But as you mentioned, it's certainly not for us to speculate and for us to say, this is the situation, because we don't actually know what actually took place. But what we do know is that family members did in fact say that they knew that she was going through some sort of mental struggle.
Camille, do you think that we find excuses too many times in Trinidad for people?
Yeah, and that's essentially, that's what I'm saying. Everything thus far with situations or instances like this in the past, we have always had afterthoughts. But what have we done with those afterthoughts? Nothing. Because we've had situations like this in the past. We know of probably our own neighbors in instances, not just in this instance where the child has been is alleged to have been strangled, but also in instances of domestic abuse. When you reach to the point where you hear, well, the husband killed the wife, or the wife stabbed the husband, or whatever it is, everyone comes and says, well, we knew what was taking place. But it's not enough for us to just say, well, I know what's taking place, but it's actually for us to act upon it.
So the other side of this is also the socio-economic aspect. Individuals within that particular area of Palo Seco stated that people who wear suits or people with money could come and talk to us as much as they want to. Nothing is ever done. We poor people are suffering. I mean, when you took a look, you saw the video, I saw the video of the home in which these individuals were living in, and the conditions within that home. This is a 10 by 10 wooden shack that we're talking about. It is appalling that people in this day and age, especially in TNT, who has gained so much in terms of wealth over the years, people are suffering and living in that condition. Now, bear in mind, I'm not blaming one particular entity, because there's so many factors that you could look at. But there is some level of truth to this now. In this socio-economic bracket, so in societies that unfortunately people actually are struggling to survive in, oftentimes their voices are completely ignored.
Yeah, that's it. As you mentioned, you and I both looked at the video in terms of where her body was discovered, and it's certainly one that it's certainly conditions that no one you wouldn't want anyone in even this day and age or even the past to be living in, just based on the weather we have experienced here in Trinidad and Tobago. But it's just a matter of looking and analyzing all the contributing factors of it, and to see that we failed this child. That's it.
I think we all have failed this child. I think we certainly all have failed this child. I think each and every one of us bear a certain level of responsibility this morning, because we have these conversations on these programs. We hope it leads to some level of progress or further discussions. And I often hope that individuals within higher offices are viewing it and get some idea that, listen, this is what's happening. Maybe they are aware of what's happening. But as you mentioned, Kemuel, there is nothing that is ever done about it. I go back to a case last year which had this nation, the entire nation responded. Andrea Barth, the murder of Andrea Barth. Right, let's not get into the story in relation to the suspects and what happened. But after that, I think we heard the Attorney General stating crocodile tears. We heard that the Minister of Works and Transport, Rohan Sinanan, indicated that they were going to now look at how they can actually, in a way, legalize page taxis. Because page taxis are deemed as, then they're not illegal. They're not legal. Up to now, nothing has been done about that. And this is the thing, so as much as we hear in a particular instance, and I'm pretty sure that we'll hear from Superintendent Claire Gallin, right, very often. We hear from the Insurance Authority. We may hear from the Minister of Youth and National Development, Social Services. We may hear from many people. But that's where it ends, isn't it?
And that's what I'm saying over and over. Andrea Barth would not have been the first person.
Yeah.
We would have had women who would have been murdered even in the past. And what we see just based on that is we always see everything. Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But what actually happens? And that's why I asked MB saying on Friday when we were speaking about crime and their crime plan. We speak about all these things, but implementation, we lack implementation. We have all the ideas, we know what our problems are, we have the solutions to our problems, but when it comes to implementation, we don't implement it.
There's a certain level of laziness, isn't there?
Yeah, a certain level of laziness. You just give the people what they want to hear at that particular point in time, and then you leave them afterwards.
Now here's where I would disagree. Yes, there is a certain lack of implementation. Totally understand that, but Kemuel, there's also a certain lack of empathy. And there's also, again, I go back to when I take a look at all my colleagues across the board in higher offices. I call them my colleagues, my fellow Trinbagonians, who have been put there by the people. There is no level of constructive thinking. I think these individuals honestly don't have a clue what to do. And what the people in Palo Seco is stating about people in suits could come and talk to us as much as they want. That is where the conversation ends. So
you see, and that's the tune that I keep singing over and over. We know what our problems are, we know what our solutions can be to fix those particular problems, but yes, we don't carry it out. But we, the people, are also to take some level of blame because of the fact that we constantly leave it up to our leaders, the people who we elected, and we don't ensure that they follow through on what they would have proposed to do in terms of fixing the problems that are actually live here in Trinidad and Tobago. We need to take some blame, and the community needs to take some blame. Trinidad and Tobago needs to shoulder some of the blame.
Now, whilst I understand where you're coming from, surely the other aspect, Kemuel, is that people don't want to get involved for the sake of their own safety. In this instance, this neighbor, you can make the argument, put themselves and their family at risk by even going to the police. But as much as we're seeing that we have a responsibility and we have to blame, and I agree with you on that, how now, and I even asked the police ambassador this, how do you change that way of thinking in Trinidad? I don't want to get involved. I don't want to go to the police. Yes, I heard this, I witnessed this, I'm observing this taking place. I'm not going to go get involved, regardless of if they tell me that it's anonymous, regardless if they say, well, you don't have to give your name. I still want to stay far away. I'm not even going to touch this with a 12-foot pole, because quite frankly, I'm not going to put myself at risk.
You see, and that speaks to us becoming desensitized and us as a society moving away from that sense of community and that sense of nationalism and that sense of national pride, and actually wanting to see us or to see Trinidad and Tobago become a better place or continue to be a better place. We've moved from actually saying, well, this is just not my neighbor's child, but this is actually my child as well, because we are in the same community. The actions of this child in the future would also contribute to how I would have to live in my future life. Because if your neighbor's child gets into a life of crime, that's going to affect the image on your particular community as well. So we've moved away from that sense of community spirit and that sense of nationalism, and that's what we need to get back to. That's what we need to attempt to foster once again within Trinidad and Tobago.
Certainly, Kemuel, I agree with you 100% with that. Also, this instance also is a reminder, because I am fearful of this happening again. Time and time and again, we have heard stories like this being raised, instances like this happening, children paying the price for other people's actions or the inactions of others. We have ignored mental health to the extent that it's become nothing more than just another topic that when instances like this is raised, is what spurs up once more. And as much as we can hear from the Single Fathers Association, the Children's Authority, etc., 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 if people in high offices don't want the situation to change and are not willing to work to changing the situation, then guess what? It's just always going to be a topic of conversation. Folks, Mackenzie, Hope, rest in peace. We take a break on the program, and when we return, well, we'll continue the conversation this morning. Stay tuned.
Set of bills here, got phone bill, light bill, and a plane ticket. Where does ticket come from? Who flying here? And look, the roof leaking now.
It sounds like you need a loan from Eastern Credit Union during the Dough Pizza promotion.
But who is you?
A lot of questions you're asking. You can get a loan for mortgage, home equity, debt consolidation, and a Georgie bundle. You know it's a Georgie bundle? Like everything in one. You can also get a chance to win up to $30,000 in prizes.
But there's my robe.
Focus, Daryl. He's sounding like you know what he's talking about. Eastern Credit Union have us covered. I done talk.
And this promotion running until August 30th. You need to go down there right now.
But why you have my toothbrush?
You still asking another question. We will be here when you come back. Go down there, let me fix the roof, and they can probably get a new bed. Their bed doesn't making a lot of noise. So go down the road, Eastern Credit Union.
But how you know about my bed?
Don't beat up, Darrell. Hurry up, hurry up. Don't beat up. We will be here.
So, tell me more about this Dobita promotion.
Well,
Fresh for you every day and delivered nationwide. Kiss Enriched Bread.
Fill your day with love.
Alright, so we're segueing into a conversation now. Again, nothing new, but come on, folks. I don't feel as though we're repeating ourselves if nothing is being done about it. I think that we don't have a choice. It's the only way that our voices will be heard, as one Madam Fix-It would state on the program. Now, this issue was raised over the weekend. Two High Court judges have issued a call for Chief Justice Ivor Archie to intervene following what is being called the closure of the criminal justice system, or crisis within the criminal justice system. So it started with Justice Carl Gobin questioning the authority of the judiciary's medical response team and court administrators, who she accused of acting to deny her and her team access to the Hall of Justice and to obstruct her in the performance of her judicial duties. She asked for the intervention of the Chief Justice, questioning the logic to shut down the Hall of Justice because of a COVID exposure to the building. She indicated that while she was informed of this via email, the instance in which there was a super spreader event the week prior to her receiving that email in the High Court, which saw many people getting sick, she said she was unaware of that and no one in her team ever mentioned it or was informed of such. She stated that the closure of this is actually hindering the judicial process from being carried out and, of course, justice being served. Now, first of all, COVID-19 is a very serious thing still. But there is an argument here. If nobody, a part of her team, was ever informed of a super spread event, if she was allowed to go back to work, according to her claims, at least 4 days after the super spread event took place, then clearly something is amiss.
Yeah, and that's certainly based on what she's saying, and even if you just think about it in simple terms, that's what we're seeing, because you had an instance before and nothing was ever done in the sense of what we're seeing now in terms of the judiciary's response, and now you're coming to just shut it down just like that. It doesn't add up. The maths isn't maths.
The maths isn't maths. You're using that term. But no details of the event were ever released to her. The Chief Justice thus far has remained silent on this. She's now issued her letter to the Chief Justice publicly to the press, and she's explained that her secretary doesn't even have access to work and judiciary programs on the laptop provided by the judiciary, and this provides assistance unless she is at her desk at the Hall of Justice. Because you're now seeing the High Court just reopening following 2 years of COVID-19. Everything was done virtually before.
Yes.
They're all coming back out to work now. We're grateful for that.
And some judges actually do want to come back out.
Right. And once more, there is a delay. Camille, listen, let me be quite frank. In TNT, we know that everything is often meddled with. We know that somebody always has their hands interfering with things, for whatever reason. Now, I'm not saying this is the case here. I'm just stating that if Justice Carol Gobin wrote to the Chief Justice, if everything that she's saying is true, then somebody once more is meddling. Because, as I said, COVID-19 is serious. But the COVID-19 rules are being manipulated a bit, and I'll explain why just now.
Yes, but just for our viewers, it should be noted that Chief Justice Ivach is out of the country, and so Justice Alan Mendonca, Justice of Appeal Alan Mendonca, is currently sitting in that particular chair. So it's interesting to see how this will play out. But what I'm looking at over the last couple of years, and not only in this particular instance, what we're seeing now is judges coming out and speaking very, very freely in the public. And I think the thing about it is that I'm happy that they're doing that, because now we're actually getting to see some of the issues, obviously, within the judiciary. Of course, I don't expect them to come out and speak on all issues that takes place within, but certainly what we're seeing now is that judges are coming out and they are speaking. And so I'm glad that Justice Gobin has brought this issue forward, because Justice Frank Sibisat, he has also commented on the story. I'm not sure if you are aware of that, but up to the news I heard this morning, he commented on the story, and he is basically in support of her claim, because he, even before this, whilst the High Court was closed, he was one of the judges that called for the High Court to reopen so that they can have their trials.
No. Justice Ranky Prasad has always been outspoken. But you didn't need to inform the viewers that Ivor Archie is out of the country. Listen, he's always out of the country. It would have been more prudent if you informed them that he's actually here with us in TNT. You know, so it's a similar situation with the president. By the way, I actually really enjoyed how she was dancing to the steel pan in Tobago. But let me not get too caught up in that. And you're right, judges over the last couple of years have been speaking out quite openly, quite freely. And it goes back, you remember a couple of years ago, there was an issue with the Law Association and the Chief Justice.
Yes.
Now I'm wondering if there are splinters or fractures amongst, I mean, yes, we were aware of the situation with Marcia A. Caesar, but in this instance now,
which is still ongoing.
Exactly, with all these judges now speaking out, there's so much controversy surrounding Ivor Archie.
Those issues certainly have not been resolved. If anyone is looking on and have been following this particular issue, those issues associated with the Chief Justice, they have not been resolved. And you have the situation where the Marcia Caesar instance, that is still ongoing, that is still before the court at present. And then now you have the situation. Yes, and then you have the situation now with the Chief Justice being out of the country, someone else acting, and the court has basically been shut down. And judges are saying that they don't have access to the tools that are needed to carry out their functions. And as you mentioned, it can speak to some level of interference within the judiciary and within how cases are carried out. Because what they're saying is that while the civil side of things has continued and functioned well even during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic rather, the criminal side of things isn't functioning well rather.
Camille, when you have a Chief Justice with so much controversy surrounding that office and the individual within that office, when you have judges, especially in the High Court, speaking so publicly now about these issues, what message is being sent to the public about our judicial system? Even though you have an Attorney General that is often speaking so highly, I mean, I guess he doesn't have any other option but to, and whilst the Minister of National Security plays very little role in that instance, he's also spoken about our criminal justice system. Even The Minister of Foreign Affairs has spoken about criminal justice system.
The Prime Minister as well, most recently,
Of course.
just over a month ago, he would have spoken about how slow things take to pass through the system. And you're absolutely correct in saying it speaks to the state of our judicial system, and we understand some of the challenges in terms of the actual court buildings, to the intimate details of how cases function and the laws relating to how justice is dispensed in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's certainly for us to not just take these instances and just hear what is actually happening, but it's for us to dig deeper and ask more questions as to what is happening with the dispensation of justice in Trinidad and Tobago.
Especially now that, again, repeating myself, but trying to get that point, I don't think people understand the severity of High Court judges now actually speaking out against the Chief Justice. That is a very harsh situation to have in your judicial system. But alone for the Prime Minister to actually speak about the state of our criminal justice system, I'm all for a separation of powers. But when you've meddled with the criminal justice system before and you've dipped your hand into it, isn't it now time that, I mean, if you've done that before, we've argued against it. I don't think there was a positive coming out of it. But shouldn't there be some level of intervention now? And how do you go through intervention if there's a separation of powers to try and fix the situation?
Well, that's the conundrum, I guess, that we're in right now, because we do know of the issues within the judiciary, and how we fix those issues or how we get solution for those issues is another thing. So I am just waiting to see how things are going in this particular direction with this, and waiting for some sort of response from the acting Chief Justice.
You sound very much like a politician, my friend. I hope you don't have to wait too long. Anyway, let's pause on that particular instance. When we get any more information on that topic, we will certainly relay that information to the public. Moving on now, the Agri-Investment Expo, that part 2 took place over the weekend, and on Friday we heard from the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali. We also heard from Paula May Weeks, and I knew she was called to speak at the event. I'm in the media. I knew she was called to speak at the event. I didn't realize she was in Trinidad, and I'm openly admitting I'm in the media.
Wait, just not. The President is back in the country.
Right? No. I'm speaking about Prime Minister Mia Motley. Right?
Oh, yeah. We weren't aware of that. And the Prime Minister, the President of Suriname as well.
Right? They spoke, and then, I heard from Prime Minister Dr. Keith. First of all, taking a look at Mia Motley, everybody admires Mia Motley, the way she ran up onto the podium. She was referring to the Prime Minister, Keith. I think I saw where Tobago had their own booth at the expo.
Yes.
She was even helping in that booth, packing the shelves, sorting out stuff on the shelves. Her speech, the way Mia Motley speaks, she doesn't need any book in front of her. She can come and speak very openly and honestly. And she stated that food and agriculture is the new oil, especially for the Caribbean.
Yeah, more so for the Caribbean, and I think what really or stayed with some people rather in this instance is her statement that 25% until we're getting our food import bill down by 25%, I think by 2025,
yes.
It just isn't enough. And she is obviously calling for more and saying that we as a region need to do more in that particular sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, because she mentioned that she thinks people, especially the younger generations, have lost the art of farming and agriculture. That ties in to what the President of Guyana, Dr. Irfan Ali, mentioned as well. He says we need more investment because we can speak about transportation, we can speak about technology, we can speak about developing new products. If we don't invest in giving people the proper education, the knowledge, the skills, the techniques, and how to go about this, you can have all the laws you want. If the regulations are not in place, it's not going to work.
And that's essentially what the former president of Massey Group was stating. I think he now sits as someone in CARICOM in terms of ensuring that investments are coming to the region. Yeah. That's essentially what he was saying, and he was very, very strong in terms of saying, here's what, we can have governments putting out money, we can have all these things, but if the private sector doesn't come on board, and if individual entities and social groups don't actually get involved in actually ensuring that our food import bill comes down, ensuring that food exports actually leave the region instead of us just importing, then what we're doing here is going to fail, because we had part one in Guyana, I think back in May or June, and then they came for part two here in Trinidad and Tobago. And so we can put on this grand show and have speeches, and everyone is there saying this and that. But if we don't actually do the work or put in the work, or all of us don't actually come on board, then we're essentially failing.
And then very finally, you know, I really enjoyed Mia Motley's speech. I really enjoyed Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali's speech, and I really enjoyed Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley's speech. I really enjoyed his speech, and I look forward, and my only thing with Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, I truly hope that what he mentioned, what he stated in his speech at the opening ceremony, I hope it goes through. You know, he mentioned the story about the Coquerico in Tobago. That was quite funny. That was really quite funny. But you know what? It was all well. Now let's look at the negative. Because there were protests by the United National Congress. And I say it's a negative. I say it's
led by an MP.
Right? I say it's a negative because everybody has the right to protest. They have the right for their voices to be heard. But I disagree with the United National Congress stating that this is a pappy show. Because if roles were reversed and the United National Congress was in power and they had an expo just like this, I don't think we would have seen that level of push against it. So to the farmers, they have every right to protest, right? But I disagree in stating that this was a pappy show. I'm against that statement entirely.
And you're absolutely correct, because as you said, had the roles been reversed, then what we would have seen is something completely different, and what would have been stated. Because I think it's like any other government having a relationship, one inviting fellow CARICOM members, and then at the particular thing, that's it. But at the end of the day, Keaton, that's the response that I expect to hear from the opposition. And some people may say that they are correct in that we've heard a lot of things about agriculture over the last 7 years, but what we have seen in terms of its output or actually investing within the sector is not what we want to see. So the government can come and say, so what they essentially say is that the government can come and say a lot of things, but the actual implementation of that is what we lack.
Well, according to Dr. Kirk Mayhew, we did not hold a protest outside the Agri Forum on Friday, although I can make an argument against that based on what I saw. We are not participating in it because the People's National Movements are not serious about agriculture. This is just a pappy show. Now, as much as I'm against them stating it's a pappy show, as much as I say this is a waste of time, he may have an argument in relation to the People's National Movement not being serious about agriculture. There may be an argument there.
Has any government been serious about agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago?
Which is exactly why I said if the rules were reversed.
Not only that, when I spoke to the president of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago, Darrell Rampasa, that's what he stated. He has been unable to meet with any minister, both former Minister Clarence Rambarat and the present minister. In fact, there are 3 ministers in that ministry, one that is responsible for land, the other responsible for whatever in the environment and the resources. And so if it's that the president of a society that has charge or some amount of charge over persons within the agricultural sector, he's saying that he's unable to meet with a minister, then what does that say about the government in terms of how serious they are about agriculture?
Well, perhaps David Mirage, for once, made a lot of sense. Well, he said it was hypocritical for the UNC to host a press conference to speak about the importance of agricultural development, but refusing to be part of any national discussion. So David Mirage had a point there. Listen, whatever your opinions may be, at the end of it all, you cannot deny the fact that part 2 of this took place in TNT. I enjoyed the Prime Minister's speech, Mia Motley's speech, Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali's speech, the presentations I enjoyed. My only hope is now that, as Kemil mentioned, there's a serious issue with implementation. Let us keep our fingers crossed that transpires.
But the actual event was well attended in terms of,
yes.
If you looked at, the lines were very, very long in terms of people actually attempting to get into the event itself. So it seems like it was a success in the end.
And congratulations to all farmers, agricultural enthusiasts, and environmentalists who took part in the expo. Congratulations to Trinidad and Tobago as well for hosting the event. Again, let's hope that the money we spent in that event leads to some investment in agriculture as well. For now, folks, let's take a break here on the program, and when we return, hopefully, if we're lucky enough, our guest will be with us. Stay tuned.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
There's a taste in the air everywhere. Feel the vibe, cause it's something to share. Smooth, rich and creamy, you'll find it right here. Makes you smile, relax a while, it's fun and good cheer. Ooh, enjoy every scoop. Ooh, every taste will get you hooked. We have flavors that you love, a combination special. Come along, enjoy your treats. This is Uncle Pete's.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
The continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Well, we hope to be joined by our guest very shortly. He is actually a resident host here at WESN Content Capital, Mr. Sule A. Joseph. Fingers crossed that he will be with us to have a 10-minute discussion. But before we go, I think as we stated on this program before, the latest happenings in relation to the Paria fuel tragedy in which 4 divers lost their lives. The attorney representing the family of one of the men who died has stated that they are preparing for procedural hearings, which is set to begin in less than 2 weeks' time. Finally. This is happening.
You see, it's probably easier for us as citizens looking on, even though we would have been touched by the tragedy in terms of it may not have been our direct relative. But it's certainly a sad situation to see that the trial is finally beginning. That took place in February, and we're now, that's on September 7th, the trial is set to begin. So it's going to touch the families in some way. Even if it was 10 years ago, it's going to touch the families.
Camille, this is the thing. It's going to touch your families, it's going to touch your nation, because the entire nation reacted to this, right? But for this to be taking place almost 6 months later, this is absolutely ridiculous. These families have not been able to rest at all. They've had to bury their loved ones, and they had to say their goodbyes, but they have no clue as to exactly what transpired. They know the circumstances surrounding their death. What led to those circumstances, we don't know, and these families have not been able to rest. Why has it taken so long? A commissioner of inquiry, okay, the history of commissioner of inquiries in Trinidad might answer that question. They all take long. But I mean, come on.
I know Rondell had discussed commissions of inquiry on Strictly Legal, and he explored the way in which it's supposed, how it's supposed to the step-by-step process, but it's certainly a sad situation now that it has taken so long, and now the families have now gotten to this point there where it's like they got closure by getting back the bodies and actually being able to have a funeral service, but now it's like it's going to open that womb once again.
Well, maybe we could have Ronell on this program. He's the host of Strictly Legal, to explore that a bit more. And maybe he might show up for the full 20 minutes if we invite him to the program. Who knows? Because now joining us on the program is our psychologist here, a host of Psych at WESN. He is a good friend of mine, Mr. Sule A. Joseph. Sule, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Peter. Thanks for having me, and it's excellent to know that I have elevated to the position of good friend. It's always good to have big shot friends in my business.
Listen. I think I have to withhold using that title now because from what I heard,
good friends, yeah.
No, well, it's not. I have a lot of good friends. I love my colleagues, but this colleague of mine didn't even bother to mention. Listen, Friday we're having a little get together. Be there. This good friend of mine was just like, never mind. But Sule, thank you. Sule, thank you for joining us this morning. With the time that we have left, I wanted to continue the conversation because I know there are many sides to that. With the cost of going back to school. Last week, Friday, Kimmel and I spoke about the cost of textbooks, the cost of uniforms, how exorbitant these prices have gotten now. But the other side of it is the impact upon the child. Because you and I discussed it very briefly on the phone Friday, but when a child goes to school and does not have the necessary textbooks or whatever is needed to ensure that they get the best out of their day in school, whilst others may have it, or they may not even have the best in terms of new school shoes or new uniform or new bags, which is a reality. How does that now impact upon the child and affect their learning?
Well, good question. One of the things we don't consider is that because we have this misnomer that education in Trinidad is free primary level, free secondary level, free tertiary level, right? And that's not the case. As a matter of fact, education on the whole is very expensive business. You, as the individual, you at home looking at us, having this conversation, you may not bear the brunt of the cost, but it's costing somebody, right? And that's only if you look at it from a financial perspective. There's also a psychological cost to education. There are economic, well, of course, economic costs, there's social costs, but there's also psychological costs. So when you look at yes, there are some issues that can occur with persons who are not prepared financially to enter into the school term. And that can have ripple effects on child's performance or the child's mentality and psychology. I remember, if my mother was to hear this program, she might hit my lash. I remember, I can't remember when I got my first brand new textbook. Probably would have been real late in life. I used to have to spend my August vacations erasing answers out of somebody used textbook. Used to go in the square, right, in Port of Spain, the Port of Spain Square, and we would have to purchase used textbooks, and you have a certain budget, and you're trying to work within your budget to get, as many of the books as you can possibly get. And of course, not getting the books means when you go to school, usually you're reprimanded for not having the books. Getting called out for that can also have some significant implications, psychologically for the child, of course.
Mm-hmm. And Sule, you mentioned that education in Trinidad and Tobago is free to be able to go to, but if you are not prepared for it in terms of having the textbooks and the books that you need, then you're essentially not able to achieve that education that you want to. Give us an idea as to the obvious question that people will ask. How do you then prepare your child to head back out to school, not just in terms of by way of having books, but mentally getting them back into that mental space?
Oh, excellent question, Clement. Excellent question. I think the value of this program just shot up with your presence. I like the quality of these questions. Excellent. This is, if you think about it, like any other major event in your life, even a trip. If you're going to take a trip, let us say you are traveling to the States for the very first time, or even if you're visiting the States. You don't pick yourself up one morning and decide that you're going to go to the States, buy a plane ticket, and just go. There are things that you need to put in place. You need US cash. You need to ensure that you have your passport organized, your visa organized. If you're going on a trip with someone else, you all will need to have conversations about where you're going to stay. So just like everything else, school is a significant event. And so you need to sit with your children and have that conversation. And not just a conversation where you as a parent doing all the talking, but you also need to do a lot of the listening, right? When children feel pressured into, I remember in my time, might be a little bit before you guys, I don't know. But I remember in my time, you used to have a JanSport bag to go to school. If you didn't have a JanSport bag, apparently people used to make fun of you, right? You also used to have to get either a pair of Clarks to wear or Nike shoes, Nike sneakers.
Old school.
My mother never bought me a Nike sneakers. As a matter of fact, I think I had a Bolt and a Flame. And I think my first JanSport bag was when I was in secondary school, and my aunt in the States got me a JanSport bag. So there are pressures that children undergo, and I think that when I say we as parents, we as adults need to have those conversations with those children prior to them entering into secondary school, into that type of school in general, in that type of environment. You need to have that conversation and prepare them mentally. Listen to some of the issues they feel they may have and how we can assist in trying to mitigate against some of those issues. It may also mean, if your parent can't afford, it may also mean bolstering their self-esteem and preparing them for some of the picong that they may have to face by not having the textbook. Or writing the school. Some children may say, but mommy, miss will put them out if I don't have the textbook, and they're freaking out about that. And it may mean that the parent needs to take that into consideration and either go into the school or write the school and inform the school, listen, we don't currently have, we can't currently afford this textbook, but we're working on it, right? So it's not enough to say that you can't afford it, but we're working on it. And so you have a plan in place. Maybe the school can assist. I remember at one point the schools had a textbook loaning system program. But I think that program was abused. A lot of parents took the books and didn't return them after they were finished for another generation of children to have access to them.
Yeah.
Right? But to answer that question, essentially just, yes, parents should meet with their children before school, sit with them and have a conversation, a very real and open conversation.
Certainly, I agree with you. I also agree that Camille's presence has certainly impacted positively on talking about. They were one-on-one as well. I believe Site is looking for a co-host to also help with that stuff, so we could look into that as well. But anyway, Sule, the other side, and I appreciate your presence, thank you very much. But also, as much as you said, listen, parents need to have that conversation with their children, and I agree with you very much. You know, education always begins at the home, in the home, within the family setting. But yes, has the education system on a whole actually failed to address, as much as you say, the psychological and mental aspects or impacts upon these little things? Because that story of a teacher putting you out because you don't have the textbook. The other side is students don't want their parents to come to the school to talk to the teacher because they're afraid of the repercussions of parents doing that.
All right. I feel like you're setting me up a little bit here, Keaton, because you know me and my love of our current education system. I feel like you're setting me up for a rant. But
you have 3 minutes to rant.
Yes. Let me answer straight out by saying yes. Yes, the system fails in some regard. In some regard, the system does well for some children as well. But the system fails in some regard as well. Yes, you will have repercussions sometimes for students. I think there's a huge divide between the way that the system is set up, the way the school is trying to be run, and parents trying to parent their child. There's not a smooth transition between parents trying to parent their children and the education system trying to educate the children while parenting them as well, by the way, because another significant aspect of teaching and the education system is to also parent children, yeah, because they teach children values and so on, re-educate, expose them to things that they may not have been exposed to at home. And that's supposed to be the purpose of education. You have formal education, which are the subjects, and you have informal education, would be the values and so on, societal norms and values, that sort of thing, what you're expected to do. That's what education is supposed to be doing. And if we are seeing things like a high increase in crime activity and fallout and so on, it means that the education system is failing, maybe not just at the academic aspect, but it's also failing in educating our children in the social aspect. So the hidden curriculum is failing as well.
Oh, sorry. Well, Sule Joseph, sorry, I thought my co-host had another question. But Sule, unfortunately, I think that's all the time that we have for this morning's interview. Thank you very much for your presence. 10 minutes is certainly a lot of time with you, but nevertheless, we appreciate your ability to make it here on the program. Looking forward to Psyched every Thursday here, Sule A. Joseph. Keep well, my friend.
If I may, before I close really quickly, I'd advise parents. I just want to rehash the parents. Have a conversation with your children before you send them out to school in September. Listen to them. Hear what are their concerns. See if you can address and allay some of them. Some concerns usually are valid, or they they're based in something valid. Fears of teachers, fears of subjects, they're usually based in something valid. So clear them out, visit the school, have a conversation. Let the school and you as a parent your child together in unison and harmony.
Well said, Sule. Well said. Thank you very much. My friend, keep well, all the best, and we'll see you very soon.
All right, take care, guys. Have a blessed one.
All the best. Well, stay psyched, as they say. Folks, we're going to break for news now here on WESN, and when we return, well, we'll open up the phone lines this morning.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. NGC reports significant turnaround in profits. Couva Chamber head calls for shorter ban on exportation of scrap metals. Agriculture Minister hails Agri-Forum and Expo a success. And internationally, 1 dozen dead from alcohol poisoning in Uganda. Now for the details. The NGC group of companies' financial performance for 2021 demonstrated a significant turnaround in profitability as it successfully navigated the global energy landscape during that year. The group recorded a profit of TT $2.6 billion for the financial year ended 31st December 2021. This profit is a far cry when compared to the loss of TT $2.1 billion in 2020. The group's revenues of TT $23.6 billion were TT $12.2 billion greater than revenues of TT $11.4 billion for 2020. According to the board of directors, the group's revenues and margins benefited from the rebound in commodity prices as the global prices of ammonia, methanol, liquefied natural gas, and natural gas liquids increased. The Couva Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mukesh Ramsingh, has called for the ban on the exportation of scrap metals to be curbed. Ramsingh says many families are suffering and the ban could well be cut shorter than the 6-month stipulated period.
The situation with the scrap iron industry right now is one that is very ticklish. We understand the fallout of it is people being put on the breadline and losing jobs. Economic-wise, it is a lucrative business and some income is going to be lost. But we're hoping that the association and the powers that be come to an amicable solution soon, and we're hoping that the 6 months ban doesn't go the full 6 months.
Agriculture Minister Kazim Hossain says the Agri-Forum was a success and agriculture remains in good hands. He was speaking at Sunday's Agri-Expo at the Queen's Park, Savannah.
I'm overwhelmed by the response from the community, not only the farming community, but people on the whole. And what I've noticed here is a lot of young people, a lot of children is here today. So that tells a lot. Farming is in good hands, agriculture is in good hands.
On to international news now. Police in northwestern Uganda are investigating the deaths of a dozen people who are suspected to have consumed a locally manufactured gin. The deaths are said to have been registered between Saturday and Sunday in Madi Okolo district. Several others, including one trader who was selling the gin known as City 5 pineapple-flavored gin, have been hospitalized with suspected poisoning. It is not clear what the ingredients in the drink are, but demineralized water, extra neutral alcohol, and pineapple flavor are listed on the bottle. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
The Mary Immaculate Prayer Group and Friends presents its prayer breakfast on August 31st in aid of Monsignor Christian Pereira. The prayer breakfast begins from 9 a.m. at the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception. Cost is only $200. Come support the Cup of Gratitude in aid of Monsignor Pereira, August 31st.
Tickets are available at the parish office of the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception and the parish of Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content's capital. Folks, well, thank you very much once more to Sule A. Joseph for joining us on the program, the host of WESN's site. And I'm very grateful for that. Also alongside me is the host of One and One, who is my sitting co-host, Mr. Kemuel Pascal. Kemuel, that conversation with your child before school starts, that I'm very glad that Sule solidified that message at the end of his interview.
I think it's something, or a conversation rather, that some parents fail to have or fail to get their children back into the prep. And I think part of that particular preparation for going back out to school is getting your child back into the routine of, as you mentioned this morning, waking up early, because you know there's traffic that you need to contend with unless you live very close to the school. So that's certainly part of the conversation and certainly part of getting your child or children back into the routine of, here's what school is going to restart, you know. So you probably need to go to sleep a little earlier this last week, and you need to be able to get up early in the morning to get yourself readjusted.
And 1 week before school started, my mother would always say that, listen, I could have been in Form 3, Form 4. My mother will set a bedtime. Yeah, I am not ashamed to say it, but it helped. Because the first week of school, after you come home, after getting to school at 8 o'clock and finishing at 2:30, you were absolutely not good. You know, it was exhausting. And you're right, I don't miss those days at all. Not one bit, you know, but our experience with education here in TNT, I think I'm very grateful for my experiences. There were many good experiences, there were many bad experiences. Nevertheless, I made it through the system. I had the guidance of my parents. My parents always had that conversation. They always took time. And in one aspect, I was very fortunate for that. And that is why I could speak and tell you parents, a simple little thing like having that conversation with your child or children before school start, that goes a long way. It really goes a long way.
Not only that, especially now going back out to school in a time of COVID-19, because we still do have COVID with us, and so it's important that parents remind their children, here's what, COVID is not over, you know, you all still have to take the necessary precautions. And
bear in mind, some students will be experiencing in-school classes for the very first time.
Yes, for the very first time. I mean, some university students as well are also going back out. So we're going to see a lot of traffic on the roads over the next month all the way up until December.
Anyway, let's open up the phone lines now on the station. Call in and join us on Talking Point. Share your thoughts and opinions with us about whatever we may have spoken this morning, because we start off the program discussing the tragic death, the murder or alleged murder. I must be careful because police have to carry their investigations regardless of whether or not the suspect confessed, of Mackenzie Hope. Then we also spoke about our criminal justice system here in Trinidad and Tobago and how High Court judges have become so outspoken. And if there are issues or controversies with the individual who's supposed to be leading the judiciary, and that is the Chief Justice, what message is that sending? We briefly spoke about the Agri-Investment Expo 2, and then we had Sule A. Joseph to join us on the conversation about there is a psychological and mental aspect that we often ignore about the cost associated with going back to school. In this instance, the term cost using to actually describe the monetary aspect that people have to pay out to get their child prepped for school. The phone line's open, call in and join us. Now, in the meantime, Kemuel, while we're waiting for that, I'd like to share some good news considering the circumstances. 8-year-old Javon Price, who was actually shot in the head last week, Tuesday night, he was fighting for his life. The good news is that he is now breathing on his own and he is off the ventilator.
That's certainly great. That means that some progress has been, he's making some amount of progress. So that's certainly great. But I mean, we can't discount the fact that a child has died, not died, sorry, but has been shot in his head. But we do have Arima on the line. Arima, good morning.
Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good show as usual.
Thank you.
I want to share two insights with all you.
Please do.
Firstly, concerning the judiciary.
Mm-hmm.
Conflict in any situation is unavoidable. We can't get away from that. But for me, you got to remember the current CJ was 6th on the list when Patrick Manning chose him.
Mm-hmm.
So it must have some kind of grievance with the people who would have been above him not being selected.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, you know, this come like Kamala versus Keith Rowley in the courthouse. Yeah. Because I can't understand you jeopardizing your safety. Because if it have COVID in the building, I ain't going.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel greater emphasis should be placed on fixing some of these laws and regulations. Let me give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, acting ASP Lal come on the TV and tell you if you get caught with pepper spray and you don't have some kind of application with Ministry of National Security, if they didn't give you permission to have it,
mm-hmm.
it's $200,000 or some kind of 3 or 5 years in prison. I understand that.
Yeah.
I feel the judiciary is supposed to spot check some of these regulations that the government coming up with overnight that infringing on your rights, because a man getting locked up with a gun and getting charged $7,500.
Mm-hmm.
Pepper spray don't kill you.
Mm.
And in terms of the agricultural expo, it was good. But if we're looking at planning, we have strategic, tactical, and operational, right?
Yes.
That's the strategic part. But the operational part is missing. And here why I would say it's missing. Access roads, the government ain't fixing none. Leases for people who own lands, they ain't interfering with that.
Mm-hmm.
Flooded, they ain't interfering with that. They don't even have a land use policy in terms of the zones of the country where you go plant, as opposed to where should be urban development.
Serious issue.
Look
Yeah.
at the St. Augustine nurseries, for example. We don't even have a proper land use policy, so we're not even looking at stage 1,
mm-hmm.
which is production. But we're talking about agro-processing and distribution, which is all well and good, but we got to deal with the production side first.
Yeah.
And I know men who would tell you that the grandmother, the mother, and them having application for lease, and up to now, nobody ain't come to get them in. There are people that died and the land lying down there. I could carry all and show 2 plots in Valencia.
Yeah.
Well, so we got to get serious about the operational side. And the courthouse had to get the act together in dispensing justice for Trinidad and Tobago, because you can't tell me this case going on with
Marseille season.
Calbarancing and them all these years, and it can't come to no end. Too much
Right.
politics in the thing.
Yeah. No, you're right, Kola.
Gentlemen.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Kola.
You're absolutely right. In the first instance, I'll address what you stated in relation to the regulations. I agree, there needs to be a stronger vetting of regulations before it's implemented. On the same hand, the Office of the Attorney General would advise on what is most suitable. Stronger penalties, but you're right. If an individual is caught with a gun, they could be fined and be out of prison. In the instance of pepper spray, $200,000. Only one minor correction on that caller. Pepper sprays are known as less lethal weaponry. There have been reports linking pepper sprays to some deaths of suspects that pepper spray was actually used on. So there are suggestions that it actually could kill you. That's why it's less lethal instead of non-lethal. But still, it doesn't matter. $200,000 for pepper spray versus $7,500 for a firearm. I mean, you made the point there very much.
But in all of that, there's obviously what is called judicial discretion. So it's really and truly up to the magistrate or the judge in the specific case.
Mm-hmm.
But the caller mentioned agriculture.
Yeah.
And he spoke about stage 1 being production. To me, based on what I heard, stage 1 really is getting the land and being able to farm. Because if you don't have land, then you essentially can't produce.
But the call is right. The people are struggling to get land. I mean, look at Arangwes, for example. The warehouses in Arangwes that have been put up on agricultural land. It's the same thing.
And causing flooding as well.
It's the same thing in Bamboo.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in Bamboo.
But we do have Shagonas on the line. Shagonas, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Professor.
Yesterday we spent a lot of time talking about school books and about minor changes and you have a new edition. This problem occurred 30 or 40 years ago. And a school book review committee was introduced to check these new school books. What happened? That not no longer operated? Do you have any idea?
No longer applicable.
Okay. The second thing you mentioned is that Tobago autonomy, and very few people seem to have a proper idea. The problem is everybody in Tobago seems to have a different idea.
Yeah, true, yes.
As to what autonomy is. Because when the government, no matter what change they make, there is always a sector who is not satisfied, they find they don't have enough autonomy or they don't have enough money or they don't have. But very few of them actually document what precisely they mean by autonomy. Unless you do this, you cannot. Because some of them believe autonomy means they could spend the money how they want and nobody must check them. That is a ridiculous statement because in government, the old adage that who pays the piper calls the tune apply. If you get money from central government have a duty to see that it is spent in accordance with whatever the provisions are. Any questions this morning, gentlemen? Now that I am keeping within my 2 minutes.
Professor, the last point that you made,
yes,
I hear you in relation to that. I think with Tobago, though, that level of oversight, as you like to put it, with central government, right? Having some level of oversight, if Tobago is getting funding from central government, I think one of the aspects of autonomy is that they would like to manage their money, manage how they spend it,
they can manage their money.
Yeah.
I am talking about the money they get from the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And secondly, if you have two islands, one 10 times bigger than the other, why the little one getting autonomy and not the big one?
Sorry, Professor, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure I understand that one. but thank you very much, Professor.
Okay, gentlemen.
Professor, I wasn't so sure about that last one. But no. Okay, so I didn't totally understand the point that you were making in relation to the autonomy and the managing of the money, because yes, they're getting it from central government, and you say they can manage their own money. What Tobago, or at least the PDP, has been arguing is that what Tobago contributes to the national economy, Tobago doesn't even get back in the national budget.
But more than that, I think the point that he was raising in terms of many people have different views on what autonomy is for Tobago. That's what was brought up by the chair of the Joint Steering Committee last year, July, when they were examining it, right before when they found themselves in the 6-6 deadlock, and they tried to revive the bill some way. That was essentially the point that was made in terms of them saying, here's what, we are the government, we are the central government, we want to give you this amount of power. I understand that you are arguing for more power. However, this is what is real in terms of all the consultations that they would have had, because some consultations date way back to the 2000s. Yeah. Then you had consultation under the Orville London-led THA, and then you had consultations.
You had consultation as far back as Robinson.
Exactly, and that's essentially it. So, I think the point that he's making is a salient point.
Well, we have a caller on the line with us from Diggle Martin. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Hi guys, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm so glad, Keaton, that you spoke about preparation for school, because I read another story about yet another child who passed for an excellent school, but was unable to attend because her family could not afford.
Yes.
So when I called just yesterday to assist with purchasing books and uniforms, etc., the coordinator from the village council said that she was being taken care of. And I was happy for that, but I also inquired about the other elements of her education, like does she have taxi fare for the 45-minute commute to and fro? Do they have electricity? Will she have a device? Does she have a desk? Can they afford food? You know, there are multiple factors to a child's education, and it's just heartbreaking that thousands of people cannot afford, because in many cases, this is the phoenix to raise the family out of poverty.
Yes.
I'm going now, Kitan, just...
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Also, in that one community, so after I asked all of that, she was pleased, but she also said, you know, they didn't want to bother people too much for too many things. I said, yeah, but there are people who would just have desks in their homes, you know, there are too many things that, and people can be getting rid of some of them while helping another person. That's one idea. Also, in that community, there were at least 20 other kids who needed help.
Yes.
You know, so this is an ongoing thing right through the country, and people need to think seriously and try to assist more people. Also, while we welcome Kemuel, Keaton, I don't like how we're all forgetting about Sean. Thanks. Goodbye. Okay.
Sean is our very, very good friend.
My dear lady, we're not forgetting about Sean. Don't worry, we have been talking to Sean. We're not forgetting about him at all. But in what you said, first of all, I must thank you and commend you for your service. As Camille stated, there's a certain level of nationalism and pride that you put into when you are assisting another family or another child, pushing them through in terms of education.
That's essentially what I was about to say, because it's great to see that someone within a community is actually playing their part. And I mean, yes, we may say, well, everybody's under pressure, but I mean, some among that you can actually do or assist in some way will actually go a long way. And if everybody chips in some way along the way, then we can actually see that this child actually goes off to school and is able to get an education as every other child would like to.
And on that particular point, I also like the fact that when you went out of your way to find out how you could assist, the village council informed you that that particular child is being taken care of. So you opted to see what you could do for other children in the community. I honestly appreciate that, and I think I take that point and really preach it this morning to everybody who is viewing this program this morning. Now, in this entire scenario of where Trinidad and Tobago is at, socio-economically as well, please do your little bit of charity. I mean, if you could just donate one can of food to a household.
Or one drawing book.
One drawing book, one pencil. It helps. It honestly helps. You know, so please, everybody is struggling. But there are some who are struggling far more than we are. Yeah. So please do your part. Now is the time for charity. Now is the time for donating. You know, you don't have to go to your school and you don't have to wait for your walkathon or your Mayfair or your bazaar in order to do some charity or in order to donate a bag of flour or whatever it may be. You can do your part with other children in the community, sending them off to school. I have seen instances where I would actually just donate school uniform or books to a child. And the expression on their face, remember they said about children being innocent, the expression on their face, or the fact that they're receiving this, even though it may not be brand new, it may be used, they're so happy for us. They're so grateful.
But Keaton, larger than that, if you look at those so-called prestige schools, right? I mean, I didn't really want to get into it, but if you look at the associations that make up these schools, they play their part as well. And if every school can have some sort of association that actually assists in terms of fostering these sort of activities and these sort of events that actually help students, because that's what those associations do in those so-called prestige schools, and other schools can do it as well and assist students. There are students who are in need going back out into school, and based on the conversation we had on Friday with Miss Ayana Miguel, in terms of the cost of going back out to school, there's certainly a need for persons within your communities, within your own school. You can assist in some way.
So, I hear you. Forgive me. The one thing that really clicked in my mind when you said that was prestige school. Kemuel, that's another conversation we should have.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because parents also need to have that conversation. There's so much pressure on students writing essay, and then there's so much pressure when they're entering school about the stigma of a prestige school. We understand why. But at the end of the day, if your child is going to this school who is known for getting so many scholarships versus this school who doesn't really get any at all, listen, it's up to the child. Parent, household, child, yes, listen, teachers may not do their part, or they may do their part. Some teachers will give up on a class, but if they notice one child trying, they will work with that child. You know, so the pressures and the stigmas associated with prestige school versus a non-prestige school, that's a conversation that we need to have as well sometime. I hope to. But I want to go back now to what the point that the caller from Shogunas was making in relation to autonomy. It's a similar example, similar from what we saw with Brexit, yes, right? About what Brexit would mean for the United Kingdom. I don't know, one example was with the infamous red bus where we sent £5 million a week to the, £500 million a week to the European Union. That turned out to be false in the end. And those who organized the campaign under which Boris Johnson was actually heading admitted that it was inaccurate. But that's in instances like that where that level of inaccuracy, that level of misinformation or disinformation, which does not help in terms of educating the public, that impacts upon the decision making at the end of the day. Prime example again, Brexit. Yeah,
and that's it. And it's a similar situation. I mean, Brexit was them coming out of the European Union, but this now one is now is what we're seeing as more autonomy for Tobago, and part of that conversation obviously is what the actual individual person that lives within Tobago wants, and not only them, but also what Trinidadians want as well in terms of that I don't want to say separation, because that's not what I personally want to push, and it's not a separation. As a separatist kind of thing, but what it really is, it's about us having the conversation, as we spoke about Tobago on Friday as well, and it's really about us having that conversation. What do the Tobagonians want in terms of autonomy for Tobago?
Camille, very controversial point. Do you think that, again, nationally, Trinidad and Tobago, but do you think that the opinions of Trinis are valid in that discussion about the autonomy for Tobago?
To an extent, yes, but it's all about Tobagonians doing what they want as well. Because we can sit here, I mean, there are some people, if we're being real, there are some people who, they don't care, whatever is whatever to them. But I can speak for myself, and I can tell you that because I love Tobagonians so much, and I have a lot of people in Tobago, a lot of friends in Tobago, as you know, I don't want to see Tobago get separated from us if it reaches to that point.
But isn't there already a level of separation? Not in terms of autonomy, but in terms of the relationship, because that's why I said very controversial point. But you notice how I controversial remember point, how I had to separate it. In that question alone, I separated Trinidad and Tobago,
and it's something that we should not be afraid to talk about. Even though people may say, well, we're pushing something, but that's not the case. We're actually having the hard conversations, actually delving deeper into what are the issues at hand.
Certainly, well, it certainly is a conversation that is, I tell you what, the next couple of years is going to be very, very interesting in terms of the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago, one which one can argue is already strained, certainly is strained. But in terms of the people of Tobago, the affairs of Tobago, Tobago autonomy, not much has been made of it or said about it since Watson Solomon Duke was charged with it. I know right now he's on the ground in Trinidad, essentially campaigning because we have local government elections coming up, very big. So we'll see what happens there. But this is basically where we conclude this morning's programming. Again,
just before we go, I see that there are protests in Point 14. They are protesting the conditions of the road. So it's something that I know you all will be following.
We certainly will be following that. And then there's a motorcade which is gathering a lot of momentum, Cardiff for Wednesday as well.
Yes.
The Scrap Iron Dealers Association.
Also Claxton Bay to Port
and the unions, the Joint Trade Union Movement has indicated their support. They'll be a part of it.
Yes, because I know the President did call for them to come on board.
Yes. And well, people may not know this, but the Used Cars Dealers Association is also involved because you've got Rondell Fields,
yes,
who's also part of it, and the United National Congress has also indicated that they will be a part of it as well. So protests continue across Trinidad and Tobago. That's, I suppose, that is the, it's not the best way, but the most realistic way to conclude Talking Point this morning. Again, rest in peace to Mackenzie Hope. I don't want to say I know that this is going to happen again, but history would tell me to...
History repeats itself.
Yeah, essentially. I'm fearful that this is going to happen again. Mr. Kemuel Pascal, thank you very much once more for your presence. A good Monday morning, nonetheless. No traffic. God, it was wonderful driving into the capital with clear street. And when I say
well,
clear,
I was actually shocked to see you here before me because I was like, all right, let me just go for my bag and then...
Yeah, and imagine if Kemuel is stating that. Imagine what time I get here. My good friend Mr. Burke might want to make an argument. Boy, this man. I was here at 7:20 this morning. I try to get here at 7:30 every morning. And let me not go any further than that. Kemuel, stay quiet. Kemuel, thank you very much to all our callers. Thank you very much to you, my friend. And the conversation continues tomorrow.
Certainly. So we do look forward to what happens. I mean, we have UNC has their Monday night forum, and whatever happens during the day today. So let's see how things go.
Certainly, a lot is transpiring. But folks, I'm Keaton Shaw. That's Kemuel Pascal. This has been Talking Points at WSN. And as ironic as it may be, or as it may seem, remember, today is a good day to have a good day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN